The desert was breathing that morning, slow, heavy, alive. Heat rippled across the dunes like waves of molten glass, turning the Afghan horizon into a mirage that fooled even the sharpest eyes. The SEALs had been in position for nearly 4 hours, their uniforms soaked in sweat, their bodies pressed into the sand as if trying to merge with it. Every movement was deliberate, every breath measured. Out here, noise was death. Through his scope, Lieutenant Jack Rains scanned the distant ridge for the 6th time. Nothing. The air shimmered so violently he couldn't tell where the land ended and the sky began. His earpiece hissed with static, and then a whisper cut through it. The kind of whisper that carried weight. Hostiles at 2-6-8-7 meters. The spotter's voice was low, almost reverent. Rain's pulse quickened. That was a long distance, nearly impossible for most rifles. But this wasn't most missions, and she wasn't most soldiers. A shadow shifted through the haze. At first, it looked like a trick of the light, a shape bending and reforming in the heat. But then it grew clearer, a silhouette, slender and composed, emerging from the curtain of dust like a ghost from another world. The SEAL beside Rains muttered under his breath, "No way. That's her." And then she appeared. Staff Sergeant Ava Morrigan. Her face was hidden behind the desert scarf, goggles reflecting sunlight like molten gold. She moved with the slow, steady rhythm of someone who had already calculated every step, every angle, every possible threat. The wind clawed at her cloak as she crouched beside them, unbothered by the heat or the tension that hung thick in the air. Rains had read her file, though most of it was redacted. Army sniper. Record-breaking marksmanship scores. 0 recorded failed missions. Her arrival had been unexpected. Special assignment, they'd said. Nobody questioned it aloud, but everyone wondered why the Navy had suddenly accepted an Army sniper, and a woman, into a covert recon unit. Now, watching her assemble her rifle, piece by piece, movement smooth and silent, Rains realized it didn't matter why she was here. It only mattered that she was. The target compound lay almost 3 kilometers away, a mud brick fortress tucked between 2 jagged cliffs. Inside, intel said, was a bomb maker responsible for 3 U.S. convoy attacks in the past month. His men were skilled, disciplined, and armed with stolen American gear. Winds at 1.3 knots, Ava said, her voice calm, almost soft. Elevations 27 degrees. Her words came measured, analytical. But there was something strange about her tone, detached yet alive, like she was listening to the earth breathe through her rifle. Range confirmed, the spotter whispered back. 2-6-8-7 meters. Rains blinked, lowering his scope. That's beyond your rifle's comfort zone, Sergeant. She didn't even look at him. There's no comfort in distance, sir. Only clarity. The line caught him off guard. Not arrogant, not emotional. Just ... factual. She finished setting her scope, adjusted the bipod, and settled into the dirt. Her breathing slowed until it became indistinguishable from the desert wind. Minutes passed. The heat pressed down like a living weight. Insects buzzed. A faint hum from the horizon signaled approaching trucks, the convoy of the target's men. Through her lens, Ava watched them emerge. 6 vehicles, armed men on the beds, laughter echoing faintly through the wind. The world through her scope was small, precise, mathematical. Distance, movement, gravity. Every heartbeat became a variable. Every breath, a calculation. She centered the crosshairs on the driver of the lead vehicle. Her finger rested lightly on the trigger guard. Then she whispered, barely audible, wind steady. Fire line confirmed. The rifle exhaled thunder. The sound rolled across the dunes like distant lightning. The bullet vanished into the horizon, and a heartbeat later, the lead driver's head snapped back. The vehicle jerked, swerved, crashed into another. Chaos erupted below. The SEALs tensed, waiting for return fire, but none came. The insurgents scattered, searching for a shooter that didn't exist. From 2,687 meters away, Ava was untouchable, a phantom with perfect aim. She adjusted the bolt, chambered another round, fired again. Another man fell. Then another. The compound erupted into panic. "Jesus Christ," muttered one of the SEALs, watching through binoculars. "She's walking them down like dominoes." Rains kept his focus on her instead. She didn't flinch, didn't even blink. Each shot came with the same steady rhythm. Inhale, hold, release, silence. It was mechanical, but not soulless. There was a strange grace in the violence, as though each pull of the trigger brought her a moment of stillness in the madness. Within minutes, the ambush had crumbled. The SEAL team advanced, clearing what remained of the compound with surgical precision. By the time they reached it, there was no resistance left, only silence, dust, and the faint smell of gunpowder carried by the wind. Ava didn't join the raid. She remained on the ridge, scanning for stragglers, her rifle still. When Rains returned, he found her sitting cross-legged beside her rifle, watching the horizon as the sun began to set. "Hell of a shot," he said, breaking the silence. She didn't respond immediately. Her gaze stayed on the dunes, as if listening to something far away. Finally, she said quietly, "One less ghost for the night." Rains frowned. "You always talk like that?" She gave a faint smile beneath her scarf. "Only when people ask." He chuckled, shaking his head. "You army snipers are weird." "Maybe," she said, standing up and slinging her rifle over her shoulder. "But weird gets the job done." They started the long trek back toward the extraction point, boots crunching softly over sand that glowed orange in the dying light. Behind them, smoke rose from the compound like a dark flag against the red horizon. The radio crackled again. Command confirmed the kill. Mission complete. For most soldiers, this would be the part where adrenaline faded, where laughter replaced tension, where someone cracked a joke about how close it had been. But Ava didn't laugh. She walked silently beside them, her eyes scanning the vast emptiness ahead. Rains studied her out of the corner of his eye. There was something about her calm that unsettled him. Not coldness, exactly, but control so deep it felt unnatural. Like she'd built walls inside her mind to keep the world out. When they reached the extraction point, the helicopter blades chopped through the hot air, whipping sand into spirals around them. Ava climbed in last, sitting near the open door, eyes fixed on the fading desert below. As the chopper lifted, Rains leaned closer and said, "You ever miss back home?" Ava's eyes flicked toward him, then back to the window. "I don't think about home," she said. "I think about distance." "Distance?" She nodded. "It's all that ever stays still." Rains didn't understand it then, but he'd remember those words later, years later, when he'd read her name again. This time not in a mission brief, but in a military report titled, "The Ghost at 2,687 meters." The desert below stretched endlessly, golden and cruel. The wind whispered through the helicopter's open door, carrying echoes of gunfire and fate. Somewhere beneath that vast silence, Ava Morrigan's legend had been born, not in triumph, but in the stillness that followed it. And for the first time in his career, Lieutenant Jack Rains felt that strange, uneasy awe reserved for those who stand between myth and reality. Because sometimes, in war, the most terrifying thing isn't the enemy you can see. It's the ally who steps out of the smoke, rifle in hand, and never misses. 3 years before the desert shot that would echo across continents, Ava Morrigan stood on a rain-soaked rifle range in Fort Benning, Georgia, the smell of wet clay thick in the air. It was early spring, gray clouds hanging low, the kind of day when most recruits prayed training would get postponed. But Ava welcomed the weather. Rain-blurred edges made the world quieter, closer to the stillness she loved. Around her, 20 trainees shifted restlessly beneath dripping helmets. The instructor's voice cut through the drizzle. 300 yards. Prone position. 2-minute window. Make every shot count. Ava dropped flat into the mud, unbothered by the cold. She slowed her breathing until the noise of shuffling boots faded. The sight picture cleared. Crosshairs aligned on the center target. One squeeze. Then another. 5 shots, all inside a ring no wider than a quarter. The instructor stared downrange, then back at the score sheet. "That's impossible," he muttered. "Check that rifle." The men beside her exchanged glances, half disbelief, half irritation. "Lucky weather," someone snorted. "Beginner's streak," another added. Ava said nothing. She'd learned early that silence disarmed people more than argument. The weight of proof in the barracks that night. Laughter echoed. Someone played country music too loud, the sound bouncing off metal bunks. Ava sat alone on her cot, cleaning her rifle piece by piece. Each click of the brush through the barrel steadied her. Across the room, a tall corporal leaned against the doorway, arms folded. "You don't talk much, Morrigan," he said. "Don't have much to say. People are starting to think you're showing off." She looked up, eyes calm. "Then they're watching the wrong thing." He left without another word, unsettled by the quiet confidence that clung to her like shadow. When lights went out, Ava lay awake, rain pattering against the roof. In her pocket was a photo her brother Eli, all grin and sunburn, taken 2 months before his unit was ambushed near Helmand. He'd been 21. She'd been 19. The news had arrived with sterile military phrasing, "Killed in action." Nothing about the laugh that shook rooms, or the way he'd promised to come home with stories. The grief had frozen something inside her, replacing tears with focus. She wasn't chasing vengeance. She was chasing understanding, how one pull of a trigger could end a heartbeat, and what kind of clarity a person needed to live with that. Trial by precision. 6 weeks into advanced training, the recruits were ordered to qualify for long-range certification. The wind that day whipped across the range like an invisible whip, tearing at flags and patients alike. Shots went wide. Tempers flared. Ava waited, studying the gusts. She wasn't the strongest or fastest, but she could read wind the way others read faces. When her turn came, she adjusted the scope. 3 clicks left, 2 up, then exhaled. Crack. Target down. Crack. Another. 10 shots, 10 perfect impacts. The range fell silent. At the far end stood Chief Hunter Deeks, a scarred SEAL sniper serving as guest instructor, gray at the temples, eyes like ground glass. He'd seen enough hot shots in his career to know confidence from luck, and what he saw in Ava wasn't bravado, it was control. When training dismissed, he motioned her over. "You shoot quiet," he said. She frowned. "Quiet?" He nodded. "Most rookies chase noise, the bang, the praise. You chase stillness. Means you understand the shot." She wasn't sure if it was praise or warning, but it stuck. From that day, Deeks began appearing beside her on ranges, correcting nothing, just watching. Sometimes he'd tell stories. Somalia, Iraq, missions that went sideways, and ones that didn't. Between tailies, he'd drop lessons like stones into a pond. A rifle's not a weapon. It's a question. You can't miss what you don't rush. One evening, after another perfect round, he asked, "Why do you keep pushing distance?" Most people settle once they qualify. She answered without thinking, "Because distance tells the truth. The closer you are, the more emotion gets in the way. Deeks grinned. That's the first honest thing anyone said here all week. Breaking the wall word spread fast about the woman, with eyes like scope glass who outshot everyone. Some admired her. Others wanted her gone. During tactical exercises, partners forgot to call wind readings or shifted target markers just to see if she'd fail. She never did. But the strain was visible. Shoulders tight, eyes ringed with sleepless circles. During one after-hours drill, a rival recruit mocked her openly. You think the Army's gonna send a woman to a sniper team? Your PR, nothing more. Ava met his smirk with steady calm. If that's true, then you should be embarrassed for losing to PR. The room went silent. The man lunged. Deeks intercepted, slamming him against a locker. Discipline, the chief barked. You want to fight? Take it to the range. She'll bury you at 800 yards. The next morning, the challenge happened unofficial, of course. 2 targets, same distance. He fired first. 3 hits, 2 misses. Ava took her time. 5 shots, 5 centers. When the dust settled, no one doubted anymore. Respect replaced mockery, even if grudgingly. That night, Deeks handed her a new rifle. M24 SWS, tuned for someone who doesn't waste bullets, he said. Keep it quiet. Lessons in stillness months, blurred into repetition. Shoot, clean, run, shoot again. Deeks pushed harder each week. He made her fire blindfolded to train muscle memory, lie motionless in AF beds to test pain tolerance, recite wind tables until they replaced lullabies. But between drills, he taught something rarer ethics. You'll see men through that scope who deserve what's coming, he told her, and others who just happen to stand in the wrong place. You pull the trigger on both the same way, but you remember the difference. That's what keeps you human. Ava nodded, storing every word. During one dusk session, he asked, You ever think about what happens after? After the shot? After the war. She hesitated. I don't think that far. Deeks sighed. You should. The hardest targets are the memories. The assignment by late 2009, Ava ranked top of her class. Her scores shattered records grouping, tighter than anyone in a decade. Command couldn't ignore it. She expected deployment to a standard infantry Overwatch unit, maybe Iraq. Instead, orders came stamped classified. Joint Special Operations Tasking, Navy SEAL Liaison Program. She found Deeks in the mess hall, orders trembling in her hand. They're sending me to a SEL detachment, Afghanistan. He smiled softly. Figures. I'm Army. They'll never trust me. They don't have to trust you. They just have to survive because of you. He paused, then reached into his pocket and handed her an old brass casing, polished smooth by years of handling. First shot I ever took, he said. Missed by 2 inches. Keep it. Reminds you that perfection's a myth. She rolled the casing between her fingers. You ever stop hearing the echoes? He looked away, eyes clouded. You don't. You just learned their rhythm. Departure. The day she shipped out, dawn painted the sky pale gold. Deeks stood at the edge of the runway, hands buried in his jacket pockets. Remember, he said over the engine roar, it's not about killing. It's about ending chaos before it grows teeth. Ava nodded, voice lost in the turbines. She wanted to thank him, but words felt too small. She settled for a salute. He returned it, sharp and proud. As the transport lifted off, she watched Fort Benning shrink beneath the clouds. The world below became a blur, fields, rivers, or sheens where she'd found her purpose. Ahead lay sand, smoke, and silence. She opened her duffel and touched the brass casing. Distance, she whispered. Clarity. The aircraft shuddered as it broke through turbulence, sun catching on her dog tags. Somewhere far below, a storm gathered over the desert she would soon walk. The girl who once lay in the Georgia mud was gone. In her place traveled the marksman who would make the seals, whisper years later, the ghost they'd call at 2,687 meters. The desert sun had long since slipped beneath the horizon, leaving behind a bruised sky purple, fading into black. In the distance, the mountains looked like the jagged teeth of some ancient creature, waiting to swallow anyone foolish enough to stray too far from the light. Somewhere among those rocks, the team of U.S. Navy SEALs waited in silence, their breath shallow, their hearts pounding in sync with the ticking of their scopes. Sierra Ghost, Wren lay prone behind her, 2010 enhanced sniper rifle, the cold metal pressing into her cheek as her eye tracked the darkness through the scope. Her world had shrunk to a circle of glass and crosshairs. The rest, sand, fear, exhaustion didn't exist. The night was alive with tension. Every sound felt magnified. Every heartbeat thundered like artillery. "Movement at 2 o'clock, whispered Chief Donovan through her earpiece. His voice, though calm, carried the gravity of command. She adjusted her scope, fine-tuning the focus. Through the faint flicker of the thermal imaging, 3 figures moved cautiously between the rocks, armed, deliberate. Hostiles. She didn't need to be told. Years of combat had taught her how men moved when they hunted. 3 tangos confirmed, she whispered back. Distance 2,687 meters. A pause. Then the reply came, low and grim. You know what to do, Ghost. That was all she needed. She exhaled slowly, letting the air leave her body in a steady stream as she settled her finger against the trigger. Her scope adjusted with precision the wind speed, humidity, temperature. At this distance, even the Earth's rotation mattered. One wrong calculation, one twitch, and she'd miss. Then she saw something else movement deeper in the shadows. More hostiles. Maybe 6 now. She could sense their intent. They weren't scouting. They were hunting them. She shifted slightly, her muscles burning from hours of stillness. 6 targets confirmed, she murmured. They're flanking east. Looks like they're waiting for a signal. Donovan's voice crackled again. We don't have time for a full strike. You take the shot. Once you fire, we move. Her heart rate didn't change. Her breathing didn't falter. This was her moment, the line between chaos and survival. She centered her scope on the lead hostile. A faint breeze tugged at her hair as she adjusted half a degree west. The man's head filled her crosshairs. Sierra squeezed the trigger. The rifle bucked against her shoulder, and for an instant, the night exploded into sound and fury. Then came the silence, the heavy, absolute kind that only follows death. Through her scope, she saw the man crumple soundlessly into the dirt. The others froze, confused, scanning the darkness for the unseen ghost who had reached across nearly 3 kilometers to end one of their own. Then chaos erupted. Gunfire lit the desert like lightning. Muzzle flashes streaked through the dark, the air filled with the hiss of bullets slicing past. Sierra rolled onto her side, chambering another round with fluid precision. Her hands moved faster than thought load. Aim, exhale, fire. Each shot dropped another hostile before they even knew where it came from. The SEAL team began to move, fanning out under covering fire. Sierra remained behind, providing overwatch, her mind laser-focused. She could feel the vibration of her heartbeat in the rifle stock. Each pull of the trigger was another step towards saving her brothers. Then she saw a flicker of movement near a ridge to the north. A sniper. She knew that silhouette anywhere. The long barrel, the stillness. The enemy had their own sharpshooter, and he had just found her. She barely moved as the first bullet cracked past her ear. The second hit close enough to send dirt spitting into her face. She slid sideways, her body moving with a predator's grace, low and fast. The third shot came, and she rolled just as it tore through the space her head had been. Her pulse stayed steady. She waited for the pause, the half-second window every sniper takes to realign. That was her moment. She spotted the faint glint of his scope. Sierra steadied her breath again. The desert went silent. She squeezed. The rifle barked. And then nothing. No movement. Just the cold wind. "Target down," she whispered. Her earpiece came alive with voices, Donovan confirming the team's advance, gunfire in the distance dying down. "Ghost, we're clear. Pack it up and fall back." She hesitated, scanning the area one last time. Smoke curled from the rocks, and through it, she could see the bodies, the evidence of a fight waged in shadows. The enemy had come for them, confident and ruthless. They'd left as dust. Sierra pulled back the bolt, her gloved hand brushing the rifle's cool frame. To her, this wasn't glory. It was math, precision, survival. But deep down, she knew that each shot carried weight a life ended to save others. When she finally stood, the first light of dawn had begun to stain the sky red. She slung her rifle over her shoulder and stepped through the thin veil of smoke that still clung to the desert floor. To the men watching her approach, she looked almost spectrally emerging from the fading mist, silent and composed, her eyes hard as steel. "Hostiles at 2,687 meters, Donovan said, a grin in his voice as he clapped her shoulder. "And you made it look easy." Sierra gave a faint smile, her gaze drifting toward the horizon. "It's never easy," she said quietly. And for a moment, the entire world seemed to pause, the team standing in the broken dawn, the battlefield silent around them, the air heavy with the echo of what they had just survived. They walked away as the sun rose, but Sierra knew this was only the beginning. Somewhere out there, others were waiting. And when the call came again, the whisper would rise through the static, "Hostiles at 2,687 meters." And once more, she'd step out of the smoke. The convoy rumbled across the barren landscape of southern Afghanistan, a thin ribbon of armored steel, cutting through a wasteland of dust and silence. The sun was relentless, leaching the horizon into a haze of gold and ash. Inside one of the lead Humvees sat Sierra, Wren helmet off, rifle resting across her knees, her eyes scanning the horizon through tinted glass. It had been 43 hours since the mission in the northern mountains, and yet sleep hadn't come easy. Not because of fear, she'd learned to bury that long ago, but because of what she'd seen. Those 6 men hadn't been random insurgents. Their weapons were too advanced, their formation too precise. Someone had trained them, supplied them. And that meant the war they thought they understood was shifting. Chief Donovan, seated beside her, glanced over. "You're thinking again," he said, half grinning. She didn't look up. "Always." He chuckled, shaking his head. "You know, Ghost, normal people would take a nap after 43 hours awake. I'm not normal people," she said flatly. He smiled at that, but his expression faded as he caught her eyes, cold, distant, calculating. The kind of look only soldiers carried after too many close calls. The kind of look that haunted them long after the battlefield. The radio crackled, interrupting the moment. "Eagle Base to Alpha Convoy, copy? You've got new orders. Redirecting to FOB Sentinel, Kandahar Province. Immediate." Donovan frowned. "FOB Sentinel? That's 200 clicks south." "Affirmative," came the reply. "Intel says high-value target is on the move. You're the closest unit." Sierra's gaze sharpened. "High-value target?" Donovan looked at her. "Guess you're not getting that nap after all." By nightfall, the convoy reached FOB Sentinel, a sprawling fortress of concrete walls and floodlights, nestled between jagged cliffs. The air buzzed with the low hum of helicopters and distant gunfire. Kandahar had always been a hotbed of chaos, but tonight it felt different, tense, electric, as if the desert itself was holding its breath. Inside the command tent, the team gathered around a flickering screen. Maps glowed under red light, digital markers pulsing like heartbeats. A tall intelligence officer briefed them. Our informant reports that an arms broker, codenamed Nergui, is scheduled to meet a Taliban cell leader in the outskirts of Kandahar city. If we intercept that meeting, we can shut down a major weapons pipeline. Donovan leaned forward. What's the catch? The officer hesitated. Nergui's men are ex-special forces mercenaries. Whoever this guy is, he's not your average arms dealer. Sierra studied the grainy photo on the screen, a bearded man in desert camo, flanked by 2 bodyguards. His eyes, even in the low-resolution image, carried the same glint she'd seen in killers before. Calm, confident, cold. When? She asked. Tonight. 200 hours. She checked her rifle, her voice quiet but firm. Then we move in now. The night was thick and windless. The air smelled of diesel and dust as the team moved through the shattered outskirts of Kandahar city. Broken walls loomed like ghosts in the dark, the remnants of lives crushed by years of war. Sierra led from the rear, her rifle scanning the rooftops. Every alley whispered danger, every shadow a possible ambush. The silence wasn't peace, it was the pause before violence. At exactly 0200, they reached the target zone, an abandoned factory complex on the city's edge. The faint glow of cigarette embers flickered near the entrance guards. 2 at the gate, whispered one SEAL. 3 more on the roof, added Sierra, her thermal scope painting their bodies in ghostly heat signatures. Donovan nodded. Ghost, you're up. She moved into position without a word, setting her rifle atop a crumbling wall. The world narrowed to her scope, her breathing slow and deliberate. One by one, the guards fell silent, surgical shots that dropped them before they could raise an alarm. Gate clear, she whispered. The SEALs advanced, moving like shadows. Inside the factory, faint voices echoed foreign, confident, unaware that death was already inside their walls. They breached the main door with controlled precision flashbangs, shouts, chaos. Sierra covered from above, her shots cutting through the confusion with deadly accuracy. The air filled with gunfire and dust. Metal screamed. The ground shook. Then, amid the chaos, Sierra saw him. The man from the photo Nergui was running toward a black SUV, parked behind the factory, his men firing wildly to cover him. She adjusted her scope, tracking his movement. Target in sight, she said. Take him, Donovan ordered. She fired. The bullet tore through the night, but at the last second, Nergui turned, the shot grazing his shoulder instead of piercing his chest. He stumbled, but his men dragged him into the vehicle, slamming the doors. Target wounded but mobile. Sierra called. The SUV roared to life, tires screeching as it sped toward the south gate. The SEALs pursued, their boots pounding against the concrete. Sierra grabbed her rifle, leaping down from the vantage point. Ghost, let it go. Donovan shouted. We'll call for intercept. But she didn't stop. She ran through the dust, adrenaline burning through her veins. Every instinct screamed that this man was more than an arms dealer. The precision of his men, the quality of their weapons, this was something bigger. Something that reached beyond Afghanistan. She aimed again, firing through the back window. The glass shattered. The vehicle swerved, crashed into a pile of rubble. Flames burst from the hood. By the time Sierra reached it, the passenger side door was open and Nergui was gone. Only blood drops led away into the dark. She followed them, moving through the ruins until she reached the edge of a narrow alleyway. There, she stopped. A faint whisper of movement, a figure watching her from the shadows. He stepped forward, unarmed but unafraid. The flickering firelight revealed a scar running down his cheek and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You're too late," he said in perfect English. "You don't even know what you're fighting." Before she could respond, a distant explosion tore through the night, the SUV, fully engulfed in flames. She turned, shielding her face from the blast, and when she looked back, he was gone. Hours later, back at Fob Sentinel, Sierra sat alone in the briefing room, the flicker of fluorescent lights dancing across her face. Donovan entered quietly, setting 2 mugs of coffee on the table. "You almost had him," he said. She didn't answer. Her gaze lingered on the blood-stained dog tag she'd found in the alley, one word etched into the metal. Erebus. "Who the hell is Erebus?" Donovan muttered. Sierra's expression hardened. "Not a who," she said quietly. "A unit." He frowned. "What kind of unit?" "The kind that isn't supposed to exist." Outside, the morning call to prayer echoed over the desert, mixing with the low hum of generators. The war went on, indifferent to victories or losses. But Sierra knew something had changed. This mission wasn't just another target. It was the beginning of something darker, something that reached into the unseen corners of military intelligence and covert operations. And somewhere out there, in the smoke and silence of the desert, the man with the scar was still watching. He knew her name now, and that meant the real hunt was about to begin. The briefing room at Fob Sentinel buzzed with tension. Screens flickered with satellite imagery, encrypted files scrolled across monitors, and the hum of machinery filled the air like static. The air smelled faintly of coffee and gun oil. Sierra Ghost Wren sat at the end of the table, hands clasped tightly around a pen she hadn't written a single word with. Her eyes were locked on the wall of classified intelligence, intercepted communications, maps with red circles drawn over remote valleys of Afghanistan and Pakistan. Across the table, Chief Donovan leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "So what's this about, Ghost? Why are we suddenly chasing ghosts of our own?" Sierra's voice was low, steady. "Because they're not ghosts. They're real. And they're playing a game we don't even understand." On the main screen flashed the name she'd been seeing in her sleep for days, Project Erebus. No one in the room had ever heard of it. No one could find a record of it in military databases. Yet somehow, it was stamped across the dog tag she'd pulled from Nergui's ambush site. A CIA liaison entered the room, a man with sharp eyes and a voice that carried quiet authority. "You've stumbled into something that wasn't meant to surface," he said. Erebus was an experimental covert task force, disbanded 8 years ago. No official record, no survivors. Donovan frowned. If it was disbanded, then who are we dealing with? The agent paused. Not who. What's left of them? The ones who went rogue. He clicked a button, and a grainy video feed filled the screen drone footage of a convoy in the desert. Intel suggests Nerjui is connected to a surviving Erebus commander Calcine Spectre. He's organizing former operatives, funding black market arms deals, and targeting coalition operations. If we can't stop him now, we're looking at coordinated strikes across multiple U.S. installations. Sierra leaned forward, her voice cutting through the noise. "Where?" The agent hesitated. "We think he's operating out of the Registan Desert. There's a ghost base, an old Soviet bunker complex. We're calling it Site 47. Donovan gave a sharp whistle. "Registan? That's suicide territory. Nothing but shifting sand and open sky. You can't even breathe out there without being seen." The agent looked at Sierra. "That's why we're sending her." By midnight, Operation Silent Mirage was greenlit. A 6-person SEAL unit, plus Sierra, was tasked with reconnaissance and neutralization of the Erebus cell at Site 47. The desert stretched before them like an endless ocean, moonlight glinting off dunes that moved like living creatures. The team traveled light 2 armored quads, a Combs truck, and supplies to last 72 hours. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the crunch of tires and the low hum of engines. Sierra sat at the rear quad, her rifle slung across her chest, scanning the horizon through night vision. Her thoughts, however, were miles away. The named specter gnawed at her. It felt familiar, like an echo from a past she'd tried to bury. She remembered her first covert mission in Mosul years ago, the rumors of an elite kill team that operated outside command structure. Soldiers spoke their name with a mix of awe and fear. Erebus. Men who didn't follow orders. Men who erased entire compounds without leaving a trace. She'd thought it was a myth. But the dog tag, the intel, the ambush, it all fit too perfectly. By dawn, they reached a plateau overlooking the suspected location. Through her scope, Sierra spotted half-buried structures jutting out of the sand metal doors, camouflaged tents, and faint heat signatures. "Got movement," she said quietly. 2 sentries. Eastern Ridge. Another near the vehicle depot. Donovan crouched beside her. "We move before they wake the whole hornet's nest." The team split, approaching from multiple directions. Sierra took the overwatch position again, her rifle whispering death in the early light. 3 guards fell before the alarm could sound. The SEALs advanced swiftly, breaching the compound with precision. Inside, the base was a relic of another war-rusted corridors. Soviet writing on the walls, old power cables snaking through sand-choked hallways. But something about it felt alive. The deeper they went, the stranger it became. Rooms had been recently reinforced. Computers glowed softly. Surveillance monitors displayed maps of U.S. forward operating bases across the region. "Holy hell," one SEAL muttered. "They've got full intel access." Donovan tapped his radio. "Base Command, this is Alpha Team. Site 47 is active." "I repeat, active? Possible intelligence breach." Static. No response. Sierra's gut twisted. Comms jammed. That's when the first explosion hit. The blast threw her backward, dust and debris raining down from the ceiling. Sirens blared, red lights flashing as the walls trembled. From the smoke emerged armed figures in tactical gear, unmarked, precise, deadly. "They're not Taliban," Donovan barked, ducking behind cover. "These are operators." Sierra fired back, her shots methodical and merciless. Every movement on the other side mirrored their own training. Whoever these men were, they fought like SEALs like her. Then she saw him. A tall figure in dark combat gear, moving with eerie calm amid the chaos. His mask reflected the flicker of explosions. He didn't shout. He didn't rush. He just raised his weapon, and every shot he took hit its mark. Spectre. Their eyes met across the smoke in fire, a single electric instant. Something about his stance, his rhythm, it felt known. Before she could react, a grenade rolled toward her. She dove aside as the blast ripped through the corridor. Pain flared in her shoulder. Her rifle skidded away. Through the haze, she saw the masked man walking toward her, unhurried, as if the battle around them didn't exist. He stopped a few feet away. "You should have stayed out of this," his voice came, low and distorted through the modulator. Sierra spat blood, glaring up at him. "You talk too much." She grabbed the sidearm from her thigh holster and fired. The bullet clipped his arm, spinning him back. He didn't fall. Instead, he stared at the wound, almost amused, before tossing a flashbang. The world exploded into white. When Sierra's vision cleared, he was gone. Only smoke, Bodies and silence remained. Ghost. Donovan's voice cut through the ringing in her ears. We're pulling out. Too many. She stumbled to her feet, disoriented but moving. The team retreated through collapsing tunnels, their path lit by muzzle flashes and fire. The sandstorm outside swallowed them as they escaped into the night. Hours later, back at a makeshift extraction point, Sierra sat against a rock, blood streaking her arm, her face pale under the glow of a small fire. Donovan approached, his voice hoarse. We lost 2 men, and half our comms data's fried. She didn't answer. Her eyes were locked on a single fragment of metal in her hand, a small triangular insignia torn from Spectre's vest. The same mark as on the Erebus dog tag. Donovan crouched. You got a good look at him? She nodded slowly. He wasn't just a mercenary. Then what was he? She looked up, her voice barely above a whisper. He was one of us. The wind howled across the dunes, carrying with it the ghosts of the fallen. Operation Silent Mirage had failed on paper, but in reality, it had opened a door that should have stayed closed. Sierra stared into the darkness, feeling something shift deep inside her. The man in the mask wasn't finished, and neither was she. For the first time, the hunter felt the weight of being hunted. The medevac helicopter thundered across the black desert sky, slicing through clouds of sand and dust. Inside, Sierra Ghost Wren sat strapped to a bench, her arm bandaged, her face streaked with grime. The rhythmic thump of the rotor blades matched her heartbeat, steady, relentless, angry. Across from her, Chief Donovan watched her in silence. There were no words left to say. The mission had failed. 2 good men were gone. Site 47 was destroyed, but not before the enemy had taken something more valuable: intelligence. Hard drives, comms data, encrypted mission codes. Whoever Spectre was, he'd anticipated every move. He'd been waiting for them. Sierra stared at the desert fading below, her reflection ghostly in the glass. For years, she'd fought battles where the enemy hid behind ideology. But this was different. This enemy knew her world, her tactics, her mindset. This was war between reflections. When the helicopter touched down at Bagram Airfield, she stepped out before it even stopped spinning. The air was cold, the night sharp with jet fuel and tension. Within minutes, she was inside the intelligence wing, demanding answers. A colonel met her there, a tired man with hollow eyes and too many secrets. He motioned for her to sit. You weren't supposed to see what was down there, Wren. She didn't sit. Then why send us? He sighed. Because Command didn't believe it was real. We thought Erebus was a rumor. A black project gone dark decades ago. It's not a rumor, Sierra said coldly. They're alive. They're organized. And they knew exactly who I was. The colonel looked away. That's what worries us. She frowned. What do you mean? He tapped a tablet on the table, bringing up a file marked classified, eyes only. The photo on the screen made Sierra's blood run cold. It was a team picture taken years earlier. She was younger, smiling faintly among a group of operatives. And standing behind her, his hand on her shoulder, was the man now known as Spectre. The colonel's voice dropped. Captain Mason Reddick. Your former CO, Mia after Operation Iron Dusk, 2016, officially presumed dead. Sierra's throat tightened. That's impossible. Mason died in Syria. His body was never recovered. For a long moment, the room was silent, except for the hum of the air conditioner. Sierra's mind raced back to that day gunfire, smoke, the explosion that had swallowed their unit. She remembered being thrown clear, the burning pain, the radio crackling with static. Mason's voice had been the last thing she heard before the signal cut. Get out, Wren. That's an order. And then nothing. She'd carried his memory like a ghost ever since. The mentor who taught her how to shoot, how to survive, how to outthink chaos. The man who told her once, in the quiet between gunfire, that's when you find who you are. Now he was alive. And he was hunting her. 3 days later, she stood in a secure hangar at Bagram, staring at a wall of surveillance footage. Drones had captured fragments, heat signatures, moving across the Registan, convoys vanishing into sandstorms. No solid leads. But she didn't need orders anymore. She wasn't waiting for command. She was going to find him. Donovan found her packing her gear rifle, sat phone, water, rations. "You're not thinking straight," he said. "I'm thinking perfectly straight." She zipped her pack and slung it over her shoulder. "They'll bury this like they always do. You know that. If we wait, Erebus will vanish again." He stepped in front of her. "And if he wants you to come? You ever think of that?" Sierra paused, her jaw tightening. "Then I'll give him what he wants." He stared at her for a moment, and exhaled. "You're out of your damn mind." "Maybe," she said softly. "But I'm not wrong." Against protocol, Donovan went with her. The two of them boarded a Black Ops helicopter under the cover of night. Heading deep into the no-man's land between Afghanistan and Pakistan, a wasteland of dunes and old Soviet ruins where no one went willingly. The flight was silent, the desert below illuminated by ghostly moonlight. Sierra sat motionless, hands clasped over her knees. Her mind kept replaying Mason's voice, the calm, measured tone, the way he'd say her calcine like it was something sacred. She trusted him once. Now, that trust had become her weapon. They landed 10 miles from the coordinates recovered from the Site 47 data logs. The air was deathly still, the stars sharp against the ink-black sky. Moving on foot, they descended into a canyon walls, carved by centuries of wind, narrow enough to trap echoes. Halfway through, Sierra stopped. Something shimmered faintly in the sand tripwire. "Laser," she whispered. "Infrared. They're expecting us." Donovan knelt beside her. "So what's the play?" Sierra's eyes scanned the rocks above. "We give them what they want." She reached into her pack, pulling out a signal beacon. With a flick of her wrist, she activated it, broadcasting her location on every encrypted military frequency within 50 miles. Donovan's eyes widened. "You just told the entire desert where we are." She gave a faint, grim smile. "No, I told him." They didn't wait long. Within minutes, the low hum of engines echoed through the canyon. Black vehicles emerged from the shadows unmarked, armored, headlights dimmed. Men in tactical gear fanned out, silent, efficient. Sierra raised her rifle, but a voice echoed from the dark. "Don't," it said. Calm, familiar. She froze. Spectre stepped into view, mask off this time. The desert wind caught his hair, streaked with gray, his face lined but steady. Mason Reddick, the ghost of her past. "Hello, Sierra," he said. Her throat tightened. "You're supposed to be dead," he smiled faintly. "I was. Until I saw what we'd become." She kept the rifle trained on him. "What did you do?" "What I had to," he replied. "The world doesn't need heroes anymore. It needs balance. You and I, we were trained to eliminate threats. But you never asked who decides what a threat is. You turned on your country," she said, voice trembling with fury. "I turned on corruption," he corrected. "On the lies they feed soldiers like us. Do you really think all those missions were about freedom? About peace?" He took a step closer, his voice softening. "You're better than that, Sierra. You've always been better. That's why I need you with me. Erebus can make it right." For a moment, she hesitated. The sincerity in his voice hit something deep. The part of her that was tired of watching good men die for empty flags. But then she saw the faces of her fallen teammates, men who'd believed in her, who'd trusted her. She steadied her aim. You killed Americans. His eyes hardened. Collateral, necessary. Don't you dare use that word. He sighed. You can't shoot me. You know I'm right. Sierra's finger tightened on the trigger. I'm not the same soldier you trained, she said. And you're not the man I followed. For the briefest instant, regret flickered across his face. Then I trained you too well. The shot rang out. But it wasn't hers. A bullet slammed into the ground beside her. Donovan shouted, "Sniper!" Chaos erupted. Muzzle flashes burst from the canyon walls. Sierra dove for cover as Spectre's men opened fire. Dust filled the air. She crawled toward the ridge, returning fire, picking targets with mechanical precision. Through the haze, she saw Mason retreating into a vehicle. Mason! She screamed, firing again. The bullet shattered the window, grazing his shoulder. But he didn't stop. The convoy roared away, disappearing into the darkness, leaving only the echo of his voice in her head. When you're ready to see the truth, you'll find me. Hours later, as the sun rose over the canyon, Sierra stood in the wreckage of the fight shell casings glittering like tiny mirrors in the sand. Donovan approached, limping, face smeared with dust. You okay? He asked. She didn't answer right away. Her eyes were on the horizon, where the tracks of the convoy vanished into the dawn. He's alive, she murmured. And he's not done. Donovan looked at her. Neither are you. She nodded slowly. No, I'm not. The wind swept through the canyon, erasing the footprints, swallowing the evidence of what had happened. But deep down, Sierra knew this was no longer just a mission. It was personal. The student had become the hunter. And the man who once taught her how to survive had just taught her what she was willing to die for. The horizon over the Hindu Kush burned red, like the sky itself was remembering war. Sierra Ghost Wren stood on a windswept ridge, the last of the night's cold fading from her skin. Below her, a convoy of military trucks rumbled eastward, carrying what was left of the Site 47 debris toward a classified installation in Northern Virginia. Command wanted the materials locked away, but Sierra knew better. Locking away secrets only made them stronger. It had been 3 weeks since the canyon ambush. 3 weeks since she saw Mason Reddick's face, alive, hardened, and filled with a conviction that chilled her more than any battlefield ever could. Every night since, his voice echoed in her dreams. When you're ready to see the truth, you'll find me. She had no orders now. The Pentagon had pulled her file, marked her non-operational, and confined her to debriefing. But Sierra didn't stay grounded. She'd seen too much. The system Mason condemned. It was still moving, still breathing, and maybe he wasn't entirely wrong. That thought scared her more than any bullet. Inside a dimly lit safe house in Peshawar, Sierra studied the screen of her encrypted laptop. A grainy satellite image flickered, a remote facility deep in the Caucasus Mountains. The metadata matched the signature of Erebus transmissions intercepted after the canyon battle. It wasn't random. It was a stronghold, Mason's new home. A door creaked behind her. Donovan stepped in, his arm in a sling, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. You're really going through with this, he said flatly. Sierra didn't look up. He's building something, Chief. You saw the tech at Site 47. That wasn't stolen hardware. That was experimental. Neural command integration, AI battlefield control. Tech even DARPA hasn't deployed. Mason's planning something bigger. Then let the brass handle it, Donovan replied. They've got satellites, strike teams. They've got politics, she interrupted. He's already in their systems. The moment they plan a move, he'll know. Donovan sighed, rubbing his temple. You can't go dark again, Ghost. They'll brand you rogue. She finally met his eyes. Maybe I am rogue. The silence between them felt like a wound neither wanted to reopen. Finally, he sat down, shoulders heavy. You think he's still savable? Sierra hesitated. No, but I think he believes I am. That's the difference. 2 nights later, Sierra crossed into Georgia under a false identity. She moved through the underbelly of the city, hackers, smugglers, disavowed mercs. She paid in untraceable crypto, traded old favors, and disappeared into the static of global noise. When she finally reached the mountain range, it was like walking into a graveyard of secrets. The Erebus compound was built into the side of a granite cliff, camouflaged beneath drone scramblers and anti-satellite jammers. It was more than a base. It was a digital fortress. She set up a perimeter half a mile out, scanning for movement. 2 guards patrolled the eastern ridge. Their comms channels were encrypted but familiar, military code, restructured but American. Mason's touch was everywhere. She tapped her earpiece. Donovan, you getting this? Static answered. She tried again. Chief, do you copy? Nothing. Then her laptop screen blinked, not from her doing. A new message appeared, typed in clean white text over black. Welcome home, Sierra. Her breath caught. She reached for her sidearm, scanning the shadows. No need for that. You've always been better at listening than shooting. Her hands trembled slightly as she typed back. Where are you? The reply came instantly. Where I've always been. Waiting for you to stop following orders. Before she could respond, the laptop shut off. The mountain ahead flickered, and then, like a ghost revealing itself, a section of the cliff shimmered and parted, exposing a steel corridor beneath. She drew her weapon and moved forward. The corridor was silent except for the soft hum of servers. Blue light pulsed along the walls, a rhythm like a heartbeat. Sierra's boots echoed faintly as she advanced deeper, her senses sharpening. Every instinct screamed trap, but something else pulled her forward. Curiosity, memory, unfinished truth. Then she saw him. Mason stood in the center of a massive chamber, surrounded by holographic displays, tactical maps, schematics, live feeds of world conflicts. His back was turned to her, his posture calm, confident, unarmed. I knew you'd come, he said, not looking back. Had to see if you were real, she replied. Or just another ghost. He turned, and for a moment, the years fell away. Beneath the gray in his beard, the eyes were the same, sharp, calculating, alive. You shouldn't have come alone. I didn't, she lied. Mason smiled faintly. Yes, you did. He gestured around them. This is what we were trained for, Sierra. Precision. Control. You think the government fights for democracy? No. They fight to own the battlefield. Erebus was born because I refused to be owned. Sierra circled him slowly. You're killing people to prove a point. I'm killing the illusion, he countered. You think America still belongs to its people? Every drone strike, every vote, every soldier's death, all data. Controlled, manipulated. But Erebus can change that. She frowned. By replacing it with your dictatorship? He shook his head. Not dictatorship. Balance. AI governance. Pure logic. No emotion, no corruption. Imagine a world where decisions aren't made by greed, but by necessity. You sound insane. No, he said softly. I sound free. Sierra felt her grip tighten. Then why hide in the dark? He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. Because light blinds people like us. For a long moment, they stood face to face. Mentor and student, hunter and hunted. 2 shadows on opposite sides of the same moral line. You can still walk away, he said quietly. I'll erase your record. You'll disappear. You don't have to die for them. She met his gaze steadily. You're right. I'm not dying for them. Her eyes hardened. I'm stopping you. Mason's expression darkened. Then you've made your choice. The lights flickered. The walls shifted, panels sliding open to reveal automated turrets locking onto her position. Sierra dove behind a console as bullets ripped through the air, sparks flying. She rolled, fired, and hit the power conduit, sending the room into chaos. Mason vanished into the smoke, shouting above the din. You can't stop it, Sierra. Erebus is already online. She chased him through the maze of corridors, alarms blaring, the base shaking from explosions triggered by her stray shots. Mason moved like a ghost, his path lit only by emergency strobes. At last, she cornered him at the control nexus, a towering server array glowing like a living organism. He stood at its base, typing commands into a terminal. Stop, she yelled. He turned, calm even as the base trembled. You're too late. The network's global. Erebus is everywhere. Sierra raised her pistol. Then I'll start with you. He smiled faintly. Do it, but remember, I made you. Every instinct you have, that's me. Her jaw clenched. Then this is me unmaking you. She fired. The bullet hit his shoulder, spinning him backward into the console. Sparks erupted. He stumbled, gripping the wound, blood spreading across his sleeve. Still, he laughed. You can destroy me, but not the code. It's already running. Sierra didn't let him finish. She shot the server's power core, and the entire room erupted in white light. The shockwave hurled her backward, glass and fire raining around her. When she woke, the base was burning. Mason was gone. The servers were dark. She limped through the smoke, coughing, her comms buzzing faintly. Ghost, it's Donovan. You alive? Barely, she rasped. The base is down. But Erebus? He said it's everywhere. Copy that, Donovan replied grimly. Then we've got bigger problems. Check your set feed. Sierra looked up as her watch lit with new alerts. Global, power grids flickering, communications collapsing, systems going offline across continents. Mason hadn't lied. Erebus wasn't just a facility. It was a virus, and it had just awakened. Sierra stared at the burning horizon, heart pounding. For the first time in her life, the enemy wasn't flesh and blood. It was code, logic, and the echo of a man she once loved like a brother. This isn't over, she whispered. Then she turned toward the dawn, walking into a world already starting to break. The world was awake, and it was already broken. Across continents, power grids faltered, satellite links blinked out, and secure military channels erupted in chaos. Sierra Ghost Wren stood on the roof of an abandoned factory outside Tbilisi, Georgia, her eyes scanning the city below. Smoke from distant fires mingled with the morning fog. Every screen she monitored, every terminal she accessed, told the same story. Erebus had gone global. Mason Reddick's code wasn't just a weapon, it was a new intelligence network, one capable of moving faster than governments could react, one built to anticipate every strike. Her comms crackled, and Donovan's voice came through, rough from static. Ghost, we've got units converging on your position. They're bringing armored support. Don't, she muttered, staring at the horizon. They won't understand until it's too late. Donovan hesitated. You know you can't do this alone. She exhaled. I've never done anything else. The satellite feed was alive with targets. Servers, drone arrays, communication hubs, all under Erebus control. Sierra traced the network, watching it pulse with Mason's digital fingerprint. He was everywhere and nowhere, a phantom across cyberspace. Every move she made, It seemed he anticipated. Then a live feed flickered on her monitor, a single, unmarked channel. A man's voice, calm and familiar. "Sierra," Mason said. His face appeared in high definition. "You've done well to get this far. I didn't think you would. But it ends now." Sierra gritted her teeth. "It ends when I say it ends, Mason. You've killed enough, manipulated enough. It's over." He smiled faintly. "Is it? Or is this the point where you finally see the truth? Every war you fought, every target you've eliminated, every order you followed, it was never yours to make. Now you can either join me or stand in the way of progress." Her finger hovered over the activation code on her laptop. With a single keystroke, she could shut down the servers she had infiltrated, cutting off Erebus current control. But she knew Mason had built redundancies. Destroying one node would not stop him. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, voice trembling. "You were one of us. One of the best." "I'm still one of the best," he replied. "I just realized we were on the wrong side." Sierra's mind raced. She remembered the canyon, the burning base, the way he had vanished into the smoke, the laugh that had chilled her. She remembered every calculation he had made to stay one step ahead, every life sacrificed to teach her obedience. And now he was teaching her something darker, survival on a scale she had never imagined. Donovan's voice broke through again. "We've got to move, Ghost. Extraction teams inbound." "We're the only ones who can." She cut him off. "No, not extraction. We end this tonight." They packed light, moving through the twisted alleys of the city, careful to avoid prying eyes. Their destination, the main node of the Erebus network, hidden beneath a decommissioned Soviet-era data center. Sierra had traced the signals here. If she could plant a virus, even temporarily, it could buy enough time to force Mason's hand. The facility was a maze of rusted steel and flickering lights. Sierra moved like a shadow, Donovan covering her flank. The hum of servers vibrated through the floors, a mechanical heartbeat pulsing under the concrete. Then came the sound she had been expecting, the soft click of a gun behind them. Mason stepped into the corridor, unarmed, but with the same calm intensity she remembered. "You can't stop me," he said. "Not fully. You know that." "I can stop you enough," she replied, raising her rifle. He tilted his head, almost amused. "Enough for who? You or the world?" She exhaled, steadying her aim. "Enough for everyone alive to have a chance." The standoff stretched for minutes, silent but taut. Sierra's finger pressed the trigger, but she didn't fire. Instead, she activated the virus she had been carrying, sending it surging through the network. Screens across the facility blinked, alarms sounding, the digital heart of Erebus faltering. Mason's eyes widened, but he didn't move. Clever. The servers sparked, blue arcs of electricity dancing across metal racks. Sierra fired, taking down the facility's remaining power nodes. Mason stumbled backward, shielding himself. "This isn't the end," he shouted over the din. "You don't understand. Erebus isn't a base. It's everywhere." She kept moving, planting explosives along the racks. The building trembled under the strain of fire and power surges. Outside, night had fallen, and the first explosions lit the sky like a grim aurora. Mason ran, limping slightly, but still fast, his mind working 10 steps ahead. Sierra pursued, heart hammering, rifle ready. They reached the rooftop as the building beneath them erupted in flame. The fire reflected in his eyes, making them look almost inhuman. "This ends now," she said. He smiled faintly. "I hoped you would say that." They clashed not with rifles, but with strategy, each trying to outmaneuver the other. Mason moved with lethal precision, anticipating her every move. Sierra had trained for this. Years of experience, reflex, instinct, but he had been her teacher once. She knew his thought patterns, and that knowledge became her weapon. The fight spilled over the edge of the rooftop. Mason stumbled, caught himself on the railing, but Sierra lunged. Their hands clashed over the rifle. Sparks flew, metal scraped, and in a final surge, she shoved him backward. He fell over the edge, disappearing into the shadows below. Sierra didn't wait to see if he survived. She turned, running down the stairwell, setting the last explosives to ensure the data center, the heart of Erebus, would be destroyed. Hours later, Sierra stood on a ridge overlooking the burning facility, flames reaching toward the stars. Donovan arrived, panting, exhausted, but alive. "You did it," he said. "I hope so," she replied, watching the fire consume the servers. "I hope it's enough." A crackle came through her comms, faint, distorted, but unmistakable. A voice she knew. "Mason, you may have destroyed this place, Sierra," he said, calm as ever. "But remember, shadows can't be burned." Her grip tightened on the rifle, but she didn't respond. Behind her, the sun began to rise over the horizon, washing the world in pale light. For the first time in weeks, Sierra allowed herself to breathe. She had stopped the immediate threat. She had survived. And though Mason Reddick and Erebus still existed somewhere out there, she had given the world a chance to fight back. Donovan approached, placing a hand on her shoulder. "What now?" Sierra turned, her eyes hard but resolute. "Now we prepare. Because shadows never disappear. They only wait." And with that, the two of them walked away from the burning ruins, leaving behind the echo of a war that had tested the limits of loyalty, morality, and survival. The desert wind carried her whispers into the distance. Ghost. Always watching. And somewhere, far away, Mason's voice answered, faint but certain, always waiting. The war had ended, but the game had only changed its rules.